Hello there and welcome along. It's Monday evening. It's live Irish time. I'm Anthony Murphy of Mythical Ireland. Good evening, one and all. No matter where you are in the world, you're very welcome. Tá fáilte roimh mo chairde go léir ar fud an domhain. Welcome along. Tonight we have an illustrated talk. It's a little bit bright here, as you can probably see. The images perhaps not as clear as it could be. It'll hopefully get dimmer as the talk goes on. And sure, by the time we're finished with the introductions, I'm sure the sun will have gone down a little bit. I hope you're all keeping safe and well. Of course, we started these live streams on the 12th of March when the Irish government announced the first restrictions over COVID-19. And a couple of weeks ago, I decided to go from daily to weekly. Hope you haven't been missing us too much. But there's been plenty to talk about in the meantime. A very good evening on YouTube to Daisy Peters, who's the first commenter tonight, says, a beautiful week to you, my dearest Tua de Mythflix. So today we go to episode 105. I'm looking forward to one more great episode. Great to have you along, Daisy. Fáilte, Seachtain Nua, a new week. Marion says, hello, Anthony. Hello, Daisy, dear. I missed that week's live. I'm here tonight. It's lovely in Alameda, California today. Blessings for us all. Nice to hear it, Marion. Hope you're keeping well. Welcome along. Sandrine Brady says, Daisy, good evening. I was wondering if you would be the first one to call into the tour tonight. How are you? Hello, Sandrine. Fáilte. Who else is there? Sandrine is there still. Jackie Stevenson says, hello, Anthony, and the wonderful Mythflix tour. Good to be here for another episode. Always a pleasure to have you along, Jackie. Fáilte. John Main says, Banachty os San Francisco to all the tour. Nice and sunny today for a change. It's also sunny here at the moment, but it's been very hit and miss lately with the weather since the lockdown ended. Mandy McCurl says, hello, everyone. Another beautiful blustery day on the Isle of Mull. Fáilte, Mandy, you're welcome along. Debbie Daly says, hi, Anthony, on the tour. From California, Fáilte. Office Care, who's the Woodsies from Monaster Boys, say, evening all, hope all is well. Summer's on the way back to Louth this week. Good to hear it. Hope you're all well. The Full Irish says, Fáilte, good evening all. It's a grand day on the sod. Yes, it is. Jack Durkin says, hi, everyone. Hello, Jack. Margaret Ring, good evening, Anthony. Fáilte, Margaret. Conasatá too. Stella David says, good evening. Fáilte, Stella. Astronomy Database says, made it. First time in a while, so glad to be here. Well, we're glad to have you here. Stephen Walker says, hello from Atlanta, Georgia. Fáilte. Alison Clipsham says, hello all. Fáilte, Alison. And on Facebook, this is going to be funny. Lloyd Stillwell says, hello from humid Missouri. Fáilte, Lloyd. Megan Walter says, hi all. Giagich. Dawn Hilton says, hi, Anthony. Hi, guys. Love from Lancashire. Fáilte, Dawn. Welcome along. Jackie McCandless says, hello, Anthony from Stroud. Fáilte, Jackie. Rowan Grove and Tom King are watching. In fact, Rowan Grove says, hello to Anthony on the tour. Looking forward to tonight's episode while sipping cold mint tea. 62 days now on Duolingo. Fantastic. You'll be better than most of us at this rate. Kelly Young Green says, hi all from Walhalla, South Carolina. Fáilte, Kelly. Jules Cousin says, hello to you all. Giagich, Jules. Barbara Barney says, hi, Anthony. Hi, everyone. It's nice to see everyone again. Yes, indeed. What a pleasure. I just had my dinner. Apologies. Jacinta Paisley says, hi, Anthony, and all. Good to be with you. Hello, Jacinta. Fáilte. Kelly Edmiston is in the house. Hello, my two sisters and brothers. Love you all. The feeling is mutual, Kelly. Hope you're well. Nick Eska Casterton says, hi, Anthony, and the wonderful two. I hope all are well. I've missed you. Well, the feeling is mutual. Hi, Nick. Kerem Gogus is watching. Hello, Kerem. Macharja. Ralph Aldrin says, Fáilte, Arash, the dinner den tua. Indeed, and thank you, Ralph. You're welcome as well. Nolan Proctor says, hi, Anthony, and the tour. Fáilte, Nolan, welcome along. Alex Casterton says, good evening, Anthony, and the tour. All the Castertons are here. It's great to have you along. Mariana Dunn says, greetings to our dear tour and to Anthony from sunny Virginia. Fáilte, Mariana. Janet Moran says, hello from sunny, warm Boston. Lovely. Very nice. All the expats over there sunning themselves. Samantha Healy says, good evening, everyone. Stranonawa. Barbara Kling says, hello, everyone. Happy to be able to join you live today. Beautiful day in Vermont. Delighted to hear it, Barbara. That's great. Alwyn Roy Badziak says, hi, Anthony and Tua. Fáilte, Alwyn. Elaine Dent Lingenfelter says, hello from Whitney, Texas. Have missed you. Sláinte, Elaine. Aidan Fahy says, greetings from Cooley in the wee county in Louth. And that is the setting, or one of the settings of Toynbo Coolinga. Coolinga being Cooley. Aidan, it's lovely to have you along. Patricia McAteer is also in Cooley and is watching. Helen Guinan is in the house. Everybody genuflect. Your Majesty. Samantha Healy says, hi, Anthony Fulcher. Samantha. Jim Conway's in the house. Hello, Jim. Kristen Murray Endre says, hello, Anthony on the tour. Good to be with everyone again. Blazing hot in Chicago. Nice to have an excuse to stay inside. Wow. Blazing hot in the windy city, huh? Adina Spark says, hello, Anthony on the wonderful tour. Glad to be here. Welcome along, Adina. Nice to have you. Neil Hughes says, Trenonoa, Anthony from sunny but chilly Coatbridge. Mary has her tea as usual. I'm considering a wee wine. I just wonder how long you will consider it before you actually go for the plunge. Nathan D. Horowitz says, Dawn, calling in a friend. Great. Louise Sherrill says, wow. Paula Snow Queen is waving, says, hiya. Giogrich. Joe Butler says, hello from Colorado. Sunny and hot. So good to see you. Fulcher Joe, thank you for your comment and welcome along. Dave Congdon says he can't watch because it's still work hours here. Ugh. Damn, you'll have to catch up later. Martin Doheny says, hello, Anthony, and all the two. Hope everyone's well. Sunny in Kilkenny. Tá sé Greenwar in you Igundelu. Laura Odomatroy says, hello, Anthony. Myself and the dog Milo interested in today's myths. Brilliant stuff. The dogs seem to be having a great time with all this stuff. Maria Rodriguez Doyle says, hello from a very windy Spain. Wind seems to be an issue today for certain people. Deborah Alam says, hello, Anthony, from a very warm Sussex in Wisconsin. Welcome to all of you. Freya Shoholm says, Banachty and good evening, Anton. And the lovely Tua. Yes, indeed, Freya. Right back at you. Sandra Patterson, hi, Anthony on the Tua. Happy Monday to you all. Yes, a good start to the week I hope you're all having. Judy McQueen says, hello, Giaguch. Helen Guinan says, hello, everyone. Yes, Your Majesty. Hope you're well. Patricia Seaver McGivern says, hi to all from sunny Florida. See, the sun is shining pretty much everywhere today. Rex Fortenberry says, Giaguch, Louisiana. Yes, indeed. Welcome along, Rex. Very nice to have you in the house. Patricia McAteer says, hello from Omeave. Brilliant. Maybe better here for the live with the image not reversed. Are you seeing it the right way around on Facebook? You should be, because I actually have it mirrored so that you can see it the right way around. Please tell me if it needs to be changed. Francis Smith says, Fulcher from Slane. Hello, Francis. Welcome back. Anne McCallum. Hello, Anne. You're welcome back. Hello, Anthony and the Mighty Tour from a very hot, sunny Windsor, Ontario. 32 Celsius, 90 Fahrenheit. Increasing daily till Thursday, 36/97. Oh, please send over some of your cooler, rainy weather. Yes, indeed. Cooler, rainy weather. We do a part exchange. You send over a little bit of warm, dry weather and we'll do a part exchange. Tom King says, good evening, Anthony and the Mighty Tua. Dram topped up and it's story time. Looking forward. Brilliant stuff, Tom. Great to have you along. Janet Cassidy says, hello all. I had trouble getting in. The door was stuck. Wow. Well, I'm glad you got in, Janet. Welcome along. Marion Cowart Smith says, hello, Anthony from North Carolina, USA. Thanks for all you do. It is a great pleasure for me to do it, Marion. I really enjoy it. Sarah Shepherd says, hello, Fulcher. Kira Morrissey Becker says, love from this Irish wild woman stuck in Germany. Absolutely amazing to discover you all. Thank you, Anthony. Truly grateful for all you and for you and all your sharing. Thank you, Kira. Very nice comment. You're welcome along. Barbara Murphy, another Murphy is in the house, says hello to her from hot, sunny Tucson, Arizona. Sounds lovely, Barbara. Send a little bit of it this way. Aaron Durrett is watching. Fulcher, Aaron. Sandra Patterson says, hi, Mary and Neil. Go for it. Absolutely. Reese Casterton says, hello, Anthony, and Tua Sláinte. Enjoying a shot of Glenfiddich. Oh, very nice. Oh, I don't have anything to match that, I can tell you. Darina Makani says, hi, Anthony. Gorau Ahanawa August. Sorry, Agot August on Tua from Bray. Fulcher, Darina, thank you for that very nice comment. Tina Trana says, much love, Tua. A beautiful, pleasant day in Moscow, Idaho. Welcome along, Tina. Sandra Boothroyd says, evening, Trenonoa. Paddy McCovale says, Trenonoa, Anthony August Tua from Glasgow in Scotland. Hello, Paddy, welcome along. Rowan Grove says, bowing to Her Majesty Helen. Yes, hope everybody was doing the same thing. Aaron Durrett says, love to you, Anthony, and the Tua brothers and sisters from the perfect day in the Pacific Northwest. Love to you all. Thanks, Aaron. Same back at you. Kimberly Halligan says, hi all from a sunny but hot New York City. Glad to hear that it is nice in New York today, Kimberly. Una Sheehan says, hi, Anthony Murphy. Good to see you there. Hello, Una. Welcome along. Welcome back. Good to see you. Doris O'Hara says, good evening, everyone from Heidelberg. Fáilte, Doris. Craig Harrell says, welcome back to Texas, my friend. And welcome back to Drogheda in Louth. Hello, Craig. Ebor Benson is watching. Hello, Ebor. Another great photographer. Sarah Shepherd says, hello from northern Utah. Hello, Sarah. Fáilte. Or is it Sarah? Pat Rowan is watching. Hello, Pat. Long time no see. Hope you're well. Janet Cassidy says, Scamalach here on Cape Cod. It is cloudy in Cape Cod. And Code is barking. Knew it wouldn't be long. It's the right way around. Good. Okay, thank you, folks. YouTube backwards till the upload. Yeah, that's what it is. But it'll be okay on the upload. Yeah, good. Good. Thank you, Coda. Yes. No, I'm doing tonight's talk. Yeah, I'll let you have a turn next week. Cy B is in the house. Hello, Cy. Sandra Boothroyd is in North Wales. I could nearly lean out the window and shout across the sea at you, Sandra. Fáilte. Okay. I'm only just getting the responses to the question about whether it was the right way around or not. That's a bit mad. It's a little bit crooked, but sure, look, we live with it. Kirsten Salisbury says, hello, lovely people. Nice to see you, Kirsten. Welcome back. Tarini Pendleton says, Banachty from Laguna Beach in California. Banachty, Tarini. Cheryl Ann McFetridge says, cheers and love from Boston. And we hear it's hot and sunny in Boston today, Cheryl Ann. Welcome along. Rowan Grove says, Colorado would be glad of some extra rain as well. Too hot here. Eva Anderson says, hello from a cold, rainy and windy Gothenburg. Now, I hate to disappoint you, Eva, but it seems to be that you're probably the only one experiencing those kind of weather conditions right now. Patrick Ruddy says, hello, everyone from a cool Glasgow. Hello, Pat, or Patrick. Anne Hurley, he says, hello, Anthony, from Cork, like. Fáilte, Anne. Jennifer Foley says, hello, everyone. Geoglitch. Jan Callahan says, looking forward to tonight's pod. Greetings from London. You're very welcome along, Jan. Hope everything is well. Adina Sparks is saying hello to Pat. Doris is bowing to Helen. Few people saying hello to Coda. Donna Jean Porter is along. Hello, Donna Jean. Fáilte. Erica Rivertree is in Louisville, Kentucky. Fáilte, Erica. You're very welcome to the show. You're very welcome to Chalk Warrachu. Liam Smith is in all the way from Ardee Hay in the Wee County. Missed the last couple of weeks. Can't wait to get settled into this, and I hope you enjoy it, Liam. Tonight is totally unscripted, as a lot of the episodes are, but the pictures will prompt me to do the talking. Kimberly Field Sipola says, hi, Anthony and Tua. Fáilte, Kimberly. Pat Rowan is saying, I'm well, thank you. Good stuff, Pat. Keep her between the ditches. Margaret Kiernan says, good evening. Hello, Margaret. Paul Gowron says, good evening, Anthony. Fáilte, Paul. Raymond Lawson says, hello, Fáilte. Julie King says, good evening, all. Geoglitch. Michael D. Porter. My wife listened every day, so naturally I couldn't help but listen too. Now I've joined the group. Love your show. Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. Thank you for that, Michael. Great to have you along. And yeah, great that you were able to have a listen in on the side when your wife was listening. Movanwe is in the house. Good to see you, Movanwe. Hope you're well. Okay. Brendan Byrne says, Glendalough calling. Fáilte, Brendan. Mello Nello is in the house. Hello, Neil. How is the babby? Great to have you all back. Yes, it's great to have you in the house. Bonsoir. Brianon Nivachon is calling in a friend. Brilliant stuff, Brianon. Adam Rory Porter is watching. Hello, Adam. Or is it Adam Rory? I don't know. Yes, sorry. I apologize. I should probably call you Adam Rory. At this point, we are at... excuse me. Anybody else? William Fitzgerald on YouTube says, hello, Anthony. I'm suffering from withdrawal. Doing my best to adjust once a week medicine for the soul. Great stories. There's good news on my side from a certain point of view about the once a week. JZ says, just back from Loughcrew in time to make this evening gathering. Hello, JZ or JZ. Mark Guinan says, hello, Anthony. from Burr with my new son, baby Rory. Thanks for all your time. Any stories from the Slieve Blooms? Love the show. That's something I'll have to look up, but you're very welcome along, Mark. And a very good evening to the baby. Rory. Lovely name. Yeah, I know. You can see the books through the screen. I know it's a little bit bright, but there isn't a whole lot I can do about it. But look, as the sun goes down, the screen will get brighter. Sure, we haven't even started yet. Kaylee During says, good evening. Hello, Kaylee. Falcha Darina Makani is calling in somebody, which is brilliant. Janet Moran says she wants me to explain why she's bowing to Helen. I did explain this in a previous episode. I work with Helen in the day job. Well, we haven't been at the office since early March. But Helen is a woman in our company who's very important. She is the gel. She is the glue that holds the whole place together. She's a very important woman. We've come to think of her as a sort of a queen of the place, you know, and she's very elegant and well-spoken and all the rest. And just one day out of the blue, I started bowing to her because I felt that she deserved it. And eventually, after a couple of days, my colleagues started joining in, and we have this thing where whenever we enter her office area, we bow to her. And so I've just continued that online. So that's the story, as good as I can tell it. HF McCloy says, I've just left Ballybreast in County Derry, Horned Tomb. Lovely evening for it. Oh, lovely. It sounds nice. Okay, so what are we on? 16:30, let's call it. So a couple of updates before we begin. The first is that Island of the Setting Sun 2020 edition is coming on very well. All of the proofing has been done from my side. I'm just awaiting back from the publisher a finished proof that I could just say, yes, it's good. I have to write a new foreword. I'm going to do that in the next couple of days. The cover is designed, pretty much ready to go. So all going well, it'll be going to print within the week. Fingers crossed. Helen McAuliffe Rancy says, hi from Queensland in Australia. Good morning, Helen. It must be really early in the morning there, Falcha. All going well, it could take 3 to 4 weeks for a turnaround to come back again. All going well, I will have copies for distribution in early to mid-August. And I know that a number of you have pre-ordered, and that's great. Thank you for your pre-orders. And I'm going to just copy in that link again. Let's get all this commercial stuff out of the way. Let's get all the advertising out of the way early in the episode, shall we? So if you want to pre-order a signed copy, I'm just pasting in the secure link to the Mythical Ireland website where you can do so. And you will be the first to receive your copies. The pre-order people will get their copies before anyone else. And just to say, I have to say it, just to say that if you are ordering on Amazon, they will not have copies until late November. So you're probably better off to order on Mythical Ireland. So fingers crossed. The usual, have to say thank you very much, as always, to the Mythical Ireland patrons at patreon.com/Mythical Ireland. Now, there's going to be a fair amount of activity there. I'm increasing the activity there, partly because of the boom of having a little bit more time as a result of not doing the live myths every day. And of course, that was one of the reasons that I wanted to reduce the frequency of live myths, was because I want to get back to writing. Now, just for example, in the past fortnight, patrons at the Bronze Age level, which is the $25 a month level and above, the $10 a month level and above, have been given access to long read articles or blog posts. The latest one is about the various stories pertaining to incest at Newgrange, running to 4,000 words. The previous one was pertaining to a hidden gem in the Dinchanicus. Now, these will make the basis of a live myths episode sometime down the line, but for the moment, the patrons get first bite of the cherry. If you want that sort of material, long read blog posts and articles, going into more depth on all of this stuff, then get over to Patreon and sign up. Initially released to the $10 a month level, and after a little while being released to the $5 a month level. Something else I should mention on that front is that I'm in the process in the last couple of days of introducing merchandise on Patreon. And so at certain levels, you will be able to, after a few months of patronage, you will apply for a free gift. So what there will be is there'll be a Mythical Ireland mug, there'll be a Mythical Ireland sticker at lower levels. On the higher levels, there'll be a Mythical Ireland poster. I actually might design several of those, but there's one done and ready. And I'm also going to do t-shirts and hoodies. Now, I haven't done merchandise before, and it's an area that I mean, I can do the design myself. There's no problem there. I suppose I'm a little bit anxious about it because I'm wondering whether the job will be done right. But anyway, I'm sure it will, because it's Patreon who look after the design. They look after the products and send them out. So patreon.com/Mythical Ireland is the place to go for all of that. And in any case, if you want to support the work that goes on here at Mythical Ireland, you can do so, and you can get other rewards. The merchandise is a new layer of rewards for patrons. So there we go. Tonight I am giving a talk. This is based on a talk that I gave last year, but of course it will be updated because new information is coming along all the time. The great news is that I got my zapper, which not only goes forward and backwards on the images, so I don't have to touch the keyboard, but I also got the laser pointer. I hope you can see that. Can everybody see? I'm pointing at the entrance of Newgrange there with the laser pointer. Can everybody see that? I hope you can all see that. Aaron Durrett says, Anthony, please do a Mythflix hoodie. Well, well, it would have to be more broad because the people on Patreon aren't necessarily. I know a lot of you are. Thank you very much. But the people on Patreon are not necessarily Mythflix followers. So it'll be more likely sort of a Mythical Ireland hoodie and a Mythical Ireland t-shirt with some photography or design work on it. I'm going to be looking after that in the next couple of days. So look, an extra reason to go over to Patreon and sign up as a patron. You'll get extra rewards, Yeah, I think everybody can see that. Good. So we'll kick off finally, says you, after 22 minutes. Yes, I can actually safely, I think, point that at you without hurting your eyes, because it can't travel through the internet. But of course, with lasers, never look at them, never point them into your face or at your eyes, and never point them at a mirror so they can beam back at you. So there you go. Okay, so this is totally unscripted, but that's the way to have it. So this is entitled Monuments, Myths and Alignments. Probably I will be repeating material that we've discussed in previous episodes. That's inevitable. But the difference being this time that you have the images to look at, and it's not just a talking head. Rexana Bauman says, hi from Missouri. I love this show. Fall to Roxana. Calvin Clown says he's blind. Sorry for laughing, but I know you're not. So this picture was actually taken a couple of years ago on the morning. Oh, Nora Gaffney O'Connor is there. Fáilte, Nora, nice to see you. Eva says, there are so many Patreon posts that I haven't got the time to read them all. That is a good complaint. I must be doing something right. That picture was actually taken on a couple of days after the summer solstice. Now, a couple of days, meaning that the sun's rising position hadn't actually moved since the summer solstice. But now here's Newgrange, and you'll know that Newgrange has this famous alignment, and there's the entrance to the passage, and the sun rises in this direction and shines in. And you can see here clearly that the sun is rising pretty much perpendicular to the passage and chamber of Newgrange. And so that's an extraordinary thing about this latitude, is that the distance, in terms of the angular distance between sunrise at summer solstice and sunrise at winter solstice, is almost 90 degrees. It's a little bit less than 90 degrees. So I think I've said this before, if you watch the summer solstice sunrise and it's there, and you put your other arm at 90 degrees, your winter sunrise will be there, fascinatingly. The sun rises on summer solstice at a few minutes before 5 in the morning, sometime around 4:55 a.m. It's extraordinary being at Newgrange at summer solstice and being the only human being pretty much in the whole area. Now, there are some dwellings in the area, and I presume people were in bed, but the only human being out and about at 5 a.m. on the summer solstice is a very, very special thing. Linda Daniel says hi from Kansas in the USA. You're welcome along, Linda. Fáilte. Because if you come here in winter, there's a huge crowd in the field here, and sometimes as many as 1,000 people on the official day of winter solstice. So it's lovely to go at the opposite end of the year. And of course, we're only a couple of weeks since summer solstice, and we haven't really noticed a shortening of the days just yet. It's still getting bright very early, and it's still staying bright well into the evening. And so Newgrange, I have to say this, and I think I've said it before, Newgrange that's not its old name. That is a name that was given to it in the 12th century by the Cistercians. St. Malachy established Mellifont Abbey a few miles to the north. And the Cistercians came into the possession of a lot of land in the area, thanks to the king of the time, Donnacha O'Carroll, I'm pretty sure, gifted them a lot of land. And they established farms or granges, and those granges gave their names to several townlands: Newgrange, Rough Grange, Little Grange, and Sheep Grange. So here's a sunset view. And again, one of my hobbies, of course, is flying the drone and looking for that extra special angle which you cannot get from the ground. And of course, with such monumental structures, it's always nice. The original name of the monument in the manuscripts is Sheedenbroga, or in a sort of a more modern pronunciation, Sheanvroa or Sheanvru. Also called She Macanog, and Macanog is Angus, the youthful son who took possession of Sheedenbroga, or Brunabonia is another name for it, but also the complex from his father, the Dagda. But we'll talk about that in a little while. Hope that you can see these pictures. As I say, as we progress into the evening, the sun gets lower, it will get dimmer, and the picture will get brighter, no doubt. So here's a view looking across the valley. I think I was showing this the first night after the digital projector arrived. Thank you, Desiree. I think I showed this. Newgrange, and in the background there's Knowth sticking up out of the fog. I sat at the side of the road on Red Mountain. So this is across the river from Newgrange. This is up on the hill where the sun rises when it shines into Newgrange. Probably about a mile away from Newgrange with a long zoom lens. And the whole valley was completely cloaked in fog. And I said, just hold fire, just stay, hang on. And I hung on. And after a while, the fog parted, as it does during the morning time as the sun gets stronger and brighter. The fog burns off, and this was the result. Lovely, lovely, lovely view. This picture is a self-portrait, and as I'm always saying, the best way to do a self-portrait when I'm involved is for me to be as far away from the camera as possible. And you can't really see my face, but it sums up the journey very nicely. I'm looking at the stars. I'm at Newgrange. I'm fascinated by astronomy, have been since I was a young child, since I was about 6 or 7 years old. The monuments are fantastic. They're incredibly complex, gigantic structures, some of the finest monuments in Europe and in the world, granted UNESCO World Heritage status in the early 1990s. And not actually because of their size and scale, but because of the amount of megalithic art in the Boyne Valley. But nonetheless, a contemplative journey, one that is not just examining the sciences of astronomy and archaeology and anthropology, but also the mystical element, the spiritual aspect, the poetic element, the creative, the pictographic, etc., etc. And here's a picture, probably not that easily visible, but that's the Milky Way running down between the trees towards Newgrange in the distance. And of course, the Milky Way is very important. We've done an episode about the Milky Way, and it's been mentioned in several episodes because of its importance in prehistory. And of course, there were several Irish names or terms for the Milky Way, which I explored in my book Mythical Ireland in 2017. Balach na Bófinna, the way of the white cow, and of course the white cow goddess Boyne gives her name to the Brunabonia complex, and by extension, one could perhaps consider Newgrange to be her womb, her pregnant belly, as it were. And there's an explanation for that, which we've also gone into, but maybe we can go into that in a little bit more detail this evening. And so one of the things that's really, really nice about being in proximity to this landscape, because I think I was telling you before several times, I live about 4 miles as the crow flies from Newgrange. It takes me about 15 to 20 minutes to get there by car. I'm a regular visitor to the valley at least a couple of times every week. Katie McMahon is in Michigan. Hello, Katie. Kelly Minich is watching. Hello, Kelly. And, sometimes you're just not anticipating, but it's always handy to have the camera, because the valley presents so many scenes in so many hues and moods and colors. And one day I was driving home from somewhere else, further down the valley, and it was one of those days, I think it was a day of April showers. The showers were very, very heavy, and the cumulonimbus clouds were towering and dark. And there was this rich contrast. If you were in this cloud had passed over, and it looked really dark gray, black, bluish. And there was a gap here where one of these trees had fallen at some stage or been blown over by a storm. And I slammed on the brakes, checking the rear view mirror, of course, and put the hazard lights on and parked in at the side of the road. And just got this view. And these views are fleeting, It's like red skies. If you see a red sky, you've got to capture it very quickly with your camera, because generally speaking, they don't last any more than 5 or 10 minutes. Sometimes they do. They go on for ages and ages, but a lot of times they don't. And so again, the drone has been powerfully useful. We'll talk a little bit about its uses, and I know you'll anticipate what that's about. But of course, when you're dealing with monuments and monumental landscapes, it is a fantastic tool to be able to put the camera basically into the air, and to put these monuments in a wider perspective of their landscape. One of the advantages of drones that has dawned on me over the last few years since I've been using one, they're actually better for aerial archaeology than aircraft by and large, especially fixed wing airplanes, because the airplanes are traveling generally at 1,000 feet, whereas the drone is allowed a maximum of 400. So you're closer to the landscape, you're closer to the monuments. The other thing is you can stop a drone exactly in the same place of the sky, whereas in an airplane you're constantly moving, and it's harder to capture good imagery. You can see more detail when you're closer to the ground. And anyway, that's something we'll talk about. That is an image of Newgrange around about mid-June, when the sun is about to approach its maximum declination and its maximum northerly azimuth on the horizon, setting pretty much directly opposite where it comes up in winter. So winter sunrise and summer sunset are pretty much opposite. Summer sunrise and winter sunset are pretty much opposite. And again, just in terms of, capturing the hues and the colors, is that if you're there, and the winter time, despite my protestations at the lack of light, the quality of the light in winter changes. And quite often you get really dramatic skies, because the weather is more inclined to be inclement in the winter. And so you get these, rain clouds, and you get these cloud formations hanging around. And then just as the sun is dipping down, suddenly the magic happens. Now, if it was dark here and you could see this properly, the reddish color extends quite a way up into the clouds there. Really spectacular. And that's one of the nice things about Newgrange, because the builders placed it on top of the ridge, as if indicating that it was the most important of all the monuments. You tend to be looking at it either from the same level, or you're looking up at it. Views of Dowth and Knowth, on the other hand, there's very little that you can see of Knowth from the public road that runs past it. Dowth is a little bit better, but Newgrange, you can kind of capture 3 sides of it. from the roads. And if you know the various locations in the valley, you can actually capture it from other locations too. Of course, the drone negates the need for any of that. Here in the foreground is a mound that we've mentioned before. This is Mound B, in the typical sort of archaic convention of the Victorian era and Edwardian era of archaeologists. Everything was given a label, and they just labeled them with letters. Of course, at one time in the Book of Leinster from the 12th century and other manuscripts, the Dinshanachus, the lore of the eminent places, gave an extensive list of the monuments of Brunibonia. Geraldine Stout, the archaeologist, has in modern times made an effort to try and reconcile those with the map that we have today that just has things labelled A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, and all the rest. This is Mound B. On its own, it's called a satellite mound. It's referred to as a satellite mound, believed to be, a satellite of Newgrange. However, if it was on its own in the landscape, Angel Barboni Smith is in the house, Fáilte. Angel. If it was on its own anywhere else, it would be considered quite a sizable mound. It's actually 40 meters in diameter, which is quite substantial. I think it's the largest of all the satellite mounds at Brunibonia, and it is about the size, maybe a little bit smaller, of the passage tomb that has been found over the past few years under Douth Hall. So quite a substantial mound. And this is the one that is called the Dagda's Mound, because after the Dagda was not banished, he was tricked out of ownership of Newgrange by his son Angus Og. This is apparently where he went to. And the curious thing is, this is on the lowest level of the alluvial floodplain of the Boyne. You can see Newgrange up on the ridge looking down. There's another level here. So there are actually sort of 3 levels. And this is the Boyne River here. And in wintertime and in the springtime, the river floods. And at times, the flooding is so extensive that Mound B becomes an island in the water, which is quite a spectacular sight. Of course, this is actually an evening time shot when the mist has started to settle. Really, really ethereal. And it's lovely to spend time in the Boyne Valley, away from the tours and away from the crowds, and at times when there's no shuttle buses ferrying tourists up and down. You get that intimate time, and of course that has been very inspirational to me in some of my less scholarly writing, more poetic and exploratory writing, and that has sort of motivated me, as it were. So there's another view of Mound B, and this is again taken from the drone on a misty morning, and you can see the proximity to the river here. It's really very, very close to the Boyne. But as I said, a very substantial structure. We now know, thanks to discoveries of recent years, especially by Ken Williams, on that fateful night of the Dronehenge discovery. I had discovered Dronehenge. Ken went and discovered a complex of henges here. This is part of a landscape in its own right, as it were, separate to Newgrange, but part of the overall Brunibonia complex. We might get a chance to talk about that as well. There's another view. And so in the winter, it's fascinating. The area still in shade is under frost, but the area where the sun is shining, the frost has melted. And you can see that the mound is casting a shadow there. So the other complexes are actually here. And there's another denuded mound in this area, which is invisible except for when the sun falls on it from exactly... Actually, sorry. It's not that side, it's this side, because I'm looking at the mirror. I apologize. Let me just get this right here. Yeah. That's it there. You can actually see it there. See the denuded mound there? That's B1. Mound B1. The companion mound of the Dagda's Mound. And so we come to the most famous of all the monuments. Well, we've already been discussing it, but we're inside. And again, I'm very fortunate to have been able to spend so much time at Newgrange over the years, especially at the time of the solstice, which is the time when the magic happens at Newgrange. And although access to the chamber for the sunrise is very difficult because the lottery winners are in there, I have been in once, but I've had access to the passage quite a bit. as the sun is retreating back down along the passage after the event. So you can see here that the critical thing is that there are effectively two beams of sunlight. There's the one that comes in the doorway, and then there's an upper beam that comes in through this aperture, which is termed the roof box. It's just terminology given to it by the archaeologists. A separate construction above the doorway, allowing sun to enter. So this beam only goes so far up the passage. This beam goes all the way into the chamber, and that's what causes the magic to happen on the morning of solstice. And there's another image taken with a wider angle lens, looking at the same thing with the sun still in the roof box, giving you sort of some indication. And of course, you know, because Red Mountain, the hill sort of over which the sun rises, can be considered an intervening horizon between Newgrange and the far horizon. It gives the sun a little bit of a chance to creep up in the sky and gain in strength. Because if you've ever watched a sunrise, you'll notice that for the first couple of minutes of sunrise, the sun is weak and you can look at it with no problem. But if you look at it about 15 minutes later, it's fairly intense. Well, it's very clever, Newgrange, because when the sun rises, it actually rises with a fair amount of brilliance, but it's still got that lovely warm colour to it. It's still got that lovely vibrance about it. Of course, this is at the end. This is after the lottery winners have exited the chamber, when the sun has risen further up in the sky. And here is a view that I took in 2010 when I was in the chamber on the morning of winter solstice. Now, we had a watery sunrise that morning, but I'll tell you what, I would take a watery sunrise any day over a complete cloud, because there are something like every year 30 or 35,000 people enter the lottery to be in with a chance to be in the chamber of Newgrange during one of the solstice days. And they draw 50 names and 50 reserve names. And, you know, if you're, for instance, from Japan or Brazil or Canada or Hawaii, you know, or Madagascar, and you've won the lottery and you're flying over to Newgrange, you're flying to Ireland to go to Newgrange for the solstice, unfortunately your ticket only guarantees you access on one day. And if that day happens to be cloudy, well, tough. You have to keep entering the lotto for the next time. So you can see here the way, I hope you can see, we'll be discussing this anyway. The passage is actually sinuous, so that the beam is shaped into a much narrower beam that enters the chamber here. This is a 3D simulation of the solstice sunrise, a model of the chamber of Newgrange by Sean Doran, fabulous work. And you can see here that originally, when the monument was constructed, the beam went all the way into the end recess, and you should hopefully be able to see here. I'm having trouble seeing it here, but I can see it here. The triple spiral emblem etched into the side of the wall here of this recess, the tri-spiral. And of course, that gave rise to the folklore, the pre-excavation folklore that said the sun shines in there once a year and lights up the triple spiral in the chamber. So here is the moment of sunrise. Now this shadow in the foreground is one of the stones of the Great Circle. That is a stone circle around Newgrange. It's actually not contemporary with the monument. It's later. It's believed to be Bronze Age, a Bronze Age edition, a minimum of 500 years after Newgrange was built, but possibly as many as 1,000 years after. But the sun rises over Red Mountain. And as I said, the far horizon, the real horizon, is somewhere down here. So you can see that the sun has been given a chance to climb up and sort of gain in strength, so that when it peeps over the hill, it almost immediately starts shining into Newgrange with this lovely, beautiful, warm, yellow-orange intensity. Now we're jumping a little bit of a distance away to the southeast of Newgrange by a distance of just over 9 miles to a much smaller monument, also of the Neolithic, same era, called Fourknocks. And Fourknocks is on a hill in the south of Meath, bordering modern County Dublin, that was excavated in 1951 by P.J. Hartnett. And it's a fascinating site because it looks really, really small on the outside. And yet when you go inside, it has a very substantial chamber with a floor area that's at least twice the size of the floor area of Newgrange. So consequently, when you're in Newgrange in a group, as some of you probably have been, I hope, if there are 20 or 25 of you in there, you have to start kind of pushing against each other, you know, backing up against the stones to create room for each other. Whereas Fourknocks can cater for a much bigger group of people, and I'm not entirely sure that I have the answer as to why that is. Now, it's made to look like a mound. There's a modern concrete roof on it with sods over the top of it that makes it look like a mound. The steps are not original, by the way, just in case you were wondering. But there's a very special alignment, which we'll talk about. Here's a plan of Fourknocks. And one thing to pay attention, a couple of things to pay attention to here. First of all, you have the cruciform shape. So in a way, it's a little bit like Newgrange and some of the other monuments, like the Eastern Chamber of Knowth, the northern of the two known chambers of Douth, and the chamber of Cairns or the Hag's Cairn of Lough Crew. But the difference here is that it's overlaid by this very large egg-shaped chamber. It's a sort of a combination of the two designs, the cross and the egg, which I think is significant. But take note also of where Knowth is. So Fourknocks points far too far towards the north, about 14 or 15 degrees east of Knowth. The sun never shines in there because the sun at summer solstice is northeast, and the moon at its standstill would be further north than that, but not enough to shine into Fourknocks. And so here's another self-portrait. I hope this gives you some idea. It's a very wide-angle lens of the chamber with its three recesses, and of course the camera is set up here in the entrance to the entrance passageway where the passageway meets. So basically the camera in that case is here at the junction of the passage and the chamber, looking in here. And you may just be able to see parts of the modern concrete roof. And what's lovely about it is that it keeps the artwork protected from frost and rain, which is very important. And some of it is pristinely preserved. And also there are light slits in the ceiling which allow light in to illuminate the various panels of megalithic art. So if you want to see more of the pictures from inside Fourknocks and videos, of course, just check out mythicalireland.com and the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Mythical Ireland. And just search for Fourknocks and you'll see lots of stuff. So this is very significant. When you're at Newgrange on the solstice, if you were able to sort of magically follow the sun out through the roof box and transport yourself along through the sky, you would eventually come to Fourknocks. They are actually featured on a long distance alignment. This is the town of Drogheda here, and here's the bend of the Boyne here. And here's Fourknocks to the south. Now, just to orient you here, north is this direction. So we're actually looking southeast. So this is southeast. We're looking towards Fourknocks. And this alignment is fairly precise. Now, if you were able to sort of track the sun from the moment it enters the roof box until the moment it leaves the roof box, you'd be looking at a wedge, a thin wedge. I think we spoke about this, didn't we, in the episode about Fourknocks? You'd be looking at a wedge, and that wedge covers the monuments on the Fourknocks Ridge. Fourknocks is part of a complex. We discussed that as well in that episode. Pardon me, likely or possibly known as Luchar Alva. From the moment Hartnett, the archaeologist, discovered the first panels of megalithic art in Fourknocks, he knew he was dealing with the Boyne megalithic culture, as he called it. This monument was likely to have been built by the same people who built Newgrange and its sister complexes in the bend of the Boyne. The artwork is very similar, and it's a sort of a similar process, similar sort of design. Vicky Wallace-Southall is in the house. Hello, Vicky. And is Evan there? If Evan is there, hello, Evan. How are you? So again, this is a reverse view of what we saw a moment ago. The camera is set up near the end recess, looking out towards the passage entrance, and there's a modern metal doorway there. So what are we looking at if we're not looking at the sunrise? We're looking actually, curiously, across at a hill called Mullateelan in the distance. On the top of that, there's a monument classified a barrow, but there's a very large enclosure on the hilltop, which could be, of course, a lot of hilltop enclosures are Iron Age enclosures. I just wonder whether the barrow is perhaps even older again, whether it's the remnant of something like a passage tomb. I'm speculating, I know. The fact of the matter is we're looking towards a hill upon which there's a monument at the top, a very substantial monument. If we follow that line further across Mullateeling, it crosses the Boyne estuary, not far from the coast, and it meets the Baltray standing stones actually very, very precisely, extremely precisely. I think I've shown that. I don't think I have an image of the alignment up close here, but it's extremely precise. And of course, when you're at the Baltray stones, if you line them up, you're looking back towards Fourknocks, which is very interesting. So there would appear to be an alignment here of sites. This is a picture from Baltray at the larger of the two standing stones, which is sort of like a hand, shaped like a hand, a big, long, broad face, and then a very narrow face. And if you look along the broad edge, you're looking out to the sea, to the island of Rockabill, which is where the sun rises approximately on winter solstice. I say approximately because the sun's rising positions of the solstices have moved very slightly by about a degree since the Neolithic due to the obliquity of the ecliptic. And so when we're looking out of the doorway of Fourknocks, what else are we looking at? And of course, back in the year 2000, 1999, 2000, myself and Richard Moore and Michael Byrne discovered this alignment in 1999. It hadn't been known about. And Michael Byrne put his binoculars against the side of the stone and discovered he could see Rockabill. And I said, do you know what? That sounds like an intentional alignment. And when we took a compass reading, I said, yeah, I imagine that is a winter solstice alignment. But when you're looking at Fourknocks, you're looking far to the north. You're possibly looking at a star rising, and that star rising, I think, is Deneb, the bright tail star of the Swan constellation. Cygnus was what we know it as today, and of course there is significant swan mythology and of course swan migratory patterns associated with Newgrange and Brunabonia, such that the whooper swans come there in very large numbers, in substantial numbers every winter, and they probably have been doing so since the Neolithic, and maybe that's partly what inspired the swan stories of Newgrange. Two particularly well-known stories, the birth of Cuchulainn, when Conchobar, the king of Ulster, and his sister Dectana, or in some versions his daughter Dectana, chase swans or bright birds from Owenmacha, from Armagh, down to the Boyne, and they stay overnight at Newgrange. And later on, Lugh appears to Dectana in a dream and says she's going to have a baby. The other one, of course, Aislinga Aengusso, the dream vision of Aengus, and we've covered that. We did an episode early on about that. So we think we're looking at the rising place of Cygnus. So there's Cygnus, and you'll notice that, I hope, that it's a distinctly cross-shaped constellation. It's cruciform, the speculation being that the passage and chamber of Newgrange, which are also cruciform, perhaps mimic the Swan constellation, as Newgrange points to Fourknocks, and Fourknocks points to the Swan star, perhaps some sort of indication of the precessional age in which they lived. And there's a map of the beam of sun as it shines along the passage of Newgrange. And here's a 3D rendered version by Sean Doran of the same thing. And you can't actually see the chamber here. You know, there's the three recesses here because they're in darkness. But you can certainly see, I hope, how the sinuous nature, the bending nature of the passage actually narrows this beam. Look how wide it is here, and how it narrows and narrows and narrows until it enters the chamber. And I think it's about 17 centimeters wide as it enters the chamber, which is about 6 or 7 inches, you know. And there's a side-on view of the same thing. And so there are the swans, the whooper swans, as I said. Now, the ornithologists, the bird watchers, the official bird watchers, Birdwatch Ireland, would say that there are about 15,000 whooper swans that migrate from Ireland to Iceland. They arrive in Ireland in October. They arrive as pretty much in one huge flock or one huge swarm over the period of a couple of days, and land at Donegal in the far northwest of the island. And they disperse from there to their wintering grounds. Anywhere that you regularly see 50 or more birds is considered an important wintering ground. And so one of those wintering grounds has been designated here at Newgrange, which is absolutely fascinating. Have they been coming here since the Neolithic is what we wonder, you know? And of course, as I said, the aforementioned swan mythology. One thing that I just should mention very briefly is that something else that's really interesting, you probably can't see it because it's too bright in the room. But the other thing that happens at the moment that Deneb is rising off the northeastern horizon and is visible from the chamber of Fourknocks. The Milky Way in the Neolithic was visible as a complete ring of light around the horizon. Now, that doesn't happen today because of something called precession of the equinoxes, which is a very slow wobble of the Earth's axis, causing the Earth's axis to sort of form a circle over a period of almost 26,000 years. It's a very, very long cycle. And one of the effects of that is that the sun's equinox and solstice points in the zodiac are shifting westwards through the zodiac very gradually. So the sun's vernal point, which is the point, the constellation backdrop, as it were, against which the sun is located on the vernal or spring equinox, is slowly regressing, as is the summer solstice point and the autumn equinox and winter solstice positions. And they are regressing slowly through the zodiac. Now, the sun spends an average of 2,100 years in each constellation. Some of you may be aware of something that actually C.G. Jung was the first to coin the phrase, the age of Aquarius, because we are gradually entering the age of Aquarius. If you were watching the Orion episode on Midsummer's Day on the 21st, we did an episode about Orion, and I showed you how Orion holds the sun on Midsummer's Day, but that gradually over the next couple of centuries, that's going to drift away. And this is this very, very slow movement. Were they able to perceive this? The authors of Hamlet's Mill, and there's a separate episode, not an episode of Live Irish Myths. There's a separate video on my YouTube channel. So if you go on to youtube.com/Mythical Ireland and search for Hamlet's Mill, you'll see a half-hour video there which discusses the book Hamlet's Mill and whether precession was perceived by the ancients, by prehistoric people of Ireland. And of course, what's also interesting about the Milky Way wrapping its way, Robin Edgar, I'm not going to get into that discussion, but I'm not disagreeing with you. But you know, the swan mythology, in my view, is much more likely to be connected with things that could be seen regularly than the very rarest of sights, which is this apparent swan shape that is seen during the moment of a total eclipse. That would be my view. But anyway, we can have that discussion another day. And of course, here's another view of the Milky Way at Knowth and another one at Newgrange. And you'll see here how it splits into two because of the dark rift. We did an episode there, didn't we? And we talked about the creation myth of the Milky Way, which is in the story of Deirdre and the sons of Ishnach, Shcriab Clon Ishnach, the track of the sons of Ishnach, and the splitting of the tree, or the growing, not the splitting, the joining of the two trees, when Deirdre and Naoise, when Naoise was killed, Deirdre threw herself into his grave, but the king had them separated and buried separately, and a tree grew from each grave and met in the middle. And according to Irish and Scottish expats in Nova Scotia and Labrador, etc., in the 19th and 20th centuries, that was their creation myth of the Milky Way. And it's interesting that Newgrange has this milky quartz around it. Was this an effort to replicate the wrapping of the Milky Way around the horizon, considering that the monuments of Brunabónir are located in a promontory of land which is surrounded by the river of the Milky Way, the Owen Bófinna, the Bright Cow River, which has the same sort of derivation of as Balach or Bóthar na Bófinna, the way or the road of the white cow, which is how the Irish, one of the many ways the Irish referred to the Milky Way. Of course, yes, you can see that Newgrange has been reconstructed. We did an episode on that too. Before anybody starts talking about it, please don't tell me that you don't like the reconstruction. That's not what this episode is about, but I do grant you that it has a very tidy, sort of manicured look about it. But this quartz is all original. It's the concrete wall that supports it that's new. But this quartz was found at the bottom of a cairn slip that the archaeologists maintain happened at some time about 5 centuries after Newgrange was built. So at that juncture of late Neolithic, early Bronze Age, there was a significant collapse of cairn material at Newgrange. Oh yeah, well here I think demonstrates it nicely that the bend. So there's Newgrange, there's Douth, and there's Knowth, but particularly Newgrange. But here is the bend of the Boyne, and you can see that it kind of encompasses this monumental landscape that is basically pretty much confined to the area between the Boyne and here's the Mattock River, a smaller river to the north. It's basically bounded by that. Now, there are some monuments to the south, but very few. The complex of Brú-na-Bóinne is by and large located to the north of the river. And I just wonder whether this thing about the river wrapping itself around Newgrange on 3 sides is replicated by the Milky Way, it's replicated by the River Boyne, and of course replicated by the White Quartz. It's a theory, and that's all it is. It's speculative. So here is an extension of the solstice alignment from Newgrange. Sheed Broga points towards Fourknocks for winter sunrise. But if you travel backwards along this alignment, you come to 2 other monuments in the far distance. And this is very interesting. The first of those is on the peak of a hill called Mount Fortescue. Now, the Fortescues were a late medieval Protestant family who owned a lot of land in the area. And it's named after them. I'm not entirely sure what its original or earlier name would have been. But there's a mound on the top, which is labeled in the National Monuments database as a tumulus. So this is not, there's a lot of Bronze Age barrows. The difficulty with a barrow is that you're only going as far back as maybe 22, 23, 2400 BC. You're not going back to the same period as Newgrange. Here you are, because if this is a tumulus, it's likely to be a passage tomb. And like Fourknocks, when it's excavated, it could be found to be the same ages or the same era as Newgrange. All of that, of course, is surrounded by this. You can see it's missing a chunk here by this spectacular hilltop enclosure. Now, the enclosure, look, it's probably Iron Age, but with the lack of... let me just double check that hasn't been excavated, actually. Yeah, I don't think it has. Yeah, a hill fort. And there aren't as many hill forts, Iron Age hill forts in Ireland as there are in Britain, where they are quite substantial in number. And then further along the alignment towards the northwest, the solstice alignment, is a cluster of barrows. This is a barrow cemetery at Slieve Bray, Breagh, or Slieve Bray. And of course, the ancient name of the plain was Brea Plain or Bray Plain. And you can see several of them. There's one there. There's one there, ring barrows. There's one there. And I think there's one there beside it. There's one here in the corner. There are actually a total of, I think it's about 35 recorded barrows on that hill, which is extraordinary. Now, I think there were limited excavations done about 50 years ago. It is my view, and of course it's speculative, that a proper excavation of that site will reveal Neolithic activity, I think. Now, I'm also led to believe by some of the locals in that area that during the recent spring drought that we had, you might remember that I did quite a lot of imagery at Brú-na-Bóinne in May and June when the grass was very parched. I'm told that several more unrecorded barrows turned up, but I didn't get a chance to fly at the time. Unfortunately, I didn't find out about that until afterwards. So that complex could be bigger than we think. Now, in essence, when you're standing at Slieve Bray on the morning of winter solstice, then you are looking across Mount Fortescue towards Newgrange, towards Fourknocks, when the sun is rising in the southeast. You're looking along this solstice alignment. Conversely, roughly speaking, actually reasonably, with reasonable accuracy, if you're at Fourknocks on summer solstice sunset, you're looking back at Newgrange and Mount Fortescue and Slieve Bray. The very, very widely renowned entrance stone of Newgrange. One of the reasons is because of the aforementioned triple spiral. There are two triple spirals in Irish megalithic art. They are both located at Newgrange. One of them on the entrance curbstone, and one of them on, as we saw in a previous image, the chamber. There's all sorts of speculation as to what the triple spiral means. There's a million theories, but I like to think that it has some meaning to do with the monument. And one of the things that is very prevalent in the mythology of the site is the idea of triple divinity or trinity, Dagda and Boyne and the miracle child Angus. And I just wonder whether it's not supposed to be Father, Son, Mother Earth, and divine offspring or something like that, you know? Who knows? Nobody's ever going to be able to tell you exactly what it means. We can't go back in time, unfortunately, and ask the builders. Of course, we can go back in time with DNA, and DNA has recently shown up some very interesting things. Something that's also very important about Newgrange in the era that was built was that Sirius, the dog star, is shining in there, something that didn't happen a couple of centuries later, due to the aforementioned precession of the equinoxes, the slow drift of the stars and the slow movement. And what's happening since the Neolithic is that Sirius is increasing in declination and getting higher and higher, and eventually, in the Neolithic, it passed. Now, this is a view from immediately inside the roof box. You would have seen the alignment from the floor of the chamber in the Neolithic, but Sirius would have transited the roof box every night, you know. Actually, I should be doing it this way to get it right. But as time went on with precession, it's getting higher and higher and higher and higher, and after a couple of centuries, it's no longer visible because it's too high in the sky. And eventually it will return again because it's a cycle. It's a full cycle. Oh, the other one, of course, is Venus, the morning star. Robin says the triple spiral could symbolize this relationship of sun, moon, and earth. Yes, indeed. And also the possibility by extension is sun, moon, and Venus, sun, moon, and morning star, because the conjunction of the moon with Venus, the moon and the morning or evening star, seems to be very important, certainly in the interpretation of folklore, and that's discussed quite widely in my first book, Island of the Setting Sun, which, as we've discussed already, is being republished. And don't forget to pre-order 2020 edition on mythicalireland.com. Got the plug in. So here's the triple spiral again. Yeah, so sun, moon, and earth, sun, moon, and morning star, sun, moon, and dog star, who knows? There is a myth in the Dunshanakas in which Ethna, which is another name for Boann, was said to have entered Newgrange in the form of a dog, and I wonder whether this is an indication of the dog star. This is one of the other very decorated curbstones, curbstone 67. In this case, a double spiral. What's lovely about this emblem is that if you drew a horizon across the middle of it there, you would actually have a very effective symbol for the yearly journey of the sun from solstice to solstice and back again, from winter to summer and back again. Because if you trace the movement of the sun during the day in winter, it's a low arc. And as the days progress and they get longer and longer, the arc gets bigger and bigger until you're at summer. And from summer onwards, of course, to winter, that arc from morning to evening gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And if you try to represent the movement of the sun from summer to winter, and winter back to summer again, in one single emblem, in one symbol, this is the perfect symbol. The winding down of the sun from summer to winter, and the winding up of the sun from winter to summer. There are diamonds or lozenges and triangles here, whose meaning I don't know about. It has been suggested by some authors that the lozenges could reference the square of the sun, or the squashed square of the sun, or the parallelogram of the sun. Not the parallelogram. What's it called when you squash a square slightly? Diamond. Yeah, I know. That could represent the angles between the solstices, but because they're different shapes, it would appear that I don't think that's on firm ground, you know. Curbstone 52 is the third of the great decorated curbstones at Newgrange. Now, remember that just off to the west of this curbstone, there are a series of curbstones that haven't been fully unearthed. During the early 20th century, R.A.S. McAllister dug a ditch around Newgrange to expose the curbstones. But a certain way through the work, he was thrown off the land by the landowner and wasn't allowed to continue. There are actually some unknown. There's the possibility that there are further very decorated stones at Newgrange, which may be revealed in the future. Of course, Professor O'Kelly, who is much maligned because of this modern concrete wall at Newgrange and its manicured look, even though a lot of that wasn't his fault or his doing. He was very forward-thinking in that, and I think we've discussed this previously. He left segments of the monument to be excavated by future archaeologists, knowing that archaeology was an evolving discipline. And there's a view in the morning. You can just see it's very nice to be able to go to Newgrange in the morning and capture these sort of twilight shots. The first of the lottery winners are arriving here. You can see them they're like shadowy figures, like the Tuatha De Danann returning to the monument. And there's Curbstone 52 there in the pre-dawn twilight. It's just wonderful to be able to get that. You can see me there, but there's Curbstone 52. And just there above Newgrange is Venus, the morning star. You can see how really bright it is compared to the other stars in the image there. There are only a couple of brighter ones that are visible. And so once in 8 years, Venus shines into Newgrange, and that was predicted or remembered, more likely, by the folklore, recorded by Joseph Campbell in the 1950s, that said the morning star shines into Newgrange once every 8 years and casts a beam between two worn sockets on a stone in the chamber. There's Curbstone 67. Obviously the concrete shelf is a modern addition. That's a plinth or a cantilevered sort of shelf or overhang to protect the stones from rain and to keep the megalithic art in the best condition possible. There also is Venus, the morning star, that was taken on the same morning. And there again is another view of Venus. You can see how spectacularly bright it is. Don't forget that from now until August, Venus is heading on into its greatest westerly elongation in the morning, which means that it's going to be a very spectacular morning object for several months. And it's going to climb very high into the sky and be a brilliant object. There's a close-up of the previously shown Curbstone 67. And of course, Newgrange, and we've discussed this on many occasions, is part of a wider complex of monuments. There's the cursus, the U-shaped cursus. If that's a cursus, it's likely to be a late Neolithic monument. The remains of the pit circle, that's a Bronze Age, early Bronze Age feature beside Newgrange. The remains of Site Z, which is a destroyed passage tomb of which only a few stones were left. And of course, in here, in the field, just to the east of that, is Site Z1. And during my recent drought imagery mission, I actually... I revealed, I think, in the best detail we've seen it so far, the plan of that, and it's cruciform as well. It points towards the south. Again, just throwing in images into the presentation just to show you how dramatic the sky and the landscape can become. Newgrange in silhouette, sticking up. You know, it's got this very impressive. I mean, I know the far landscape rises up higher, but it's got this very impressive presence in the landscape. And when you get wintry skies like this, where there's a mixture of cloud and sun, you get the sunbeams doing these extraordinary things. And another of my many drone shots. Lovely to be able to capture those images. And then we move on to Knowth, which is a sister site of Newgrange. There are three what we call giant or mega mounds at Brunabonia. It is thought that Newgrange was built around 3200 BC. Knowth a little bit earlier, 3300 BC. And as you can see, Knowth is part of a very extensive complex. There are no fewer than 18 of these satellite passage mounds around Knowth. Sorry, that's a timber circle, which is a reconstructed late Neolithic monument. Knowth has a very prominent position overlooking the bend of the Boyne, where it suddenly bends away towards Slane. And, it veers off to the south here, and that's really where the bend of the Boyne starts. That position of prominence was used because in Iron Age and early medieval times it was reinforced. There was a ditch built behind the curbstones, and there were houses built on top, and it was all reinforced. In fact, it was the capital in the early medieval period of the kingdom of Northern Brea, and one of the kings was King Congalach, or as one of the guides at Knowth says, King Kong of Knowth. But you can see it's a very impressive monument. Said in the mythology to have been the place of burial of a goddess, Bui or Bua, Knock Bua, or Knock Bui, eventually being transformed into Knogba or Knova and anglicized to Knowth. And the other goddess mentioned in the mythology is Englec, who was Angus's lover, according to the story. But Angus was away one Samhain playing games with his friends, with the boys, and Midger, who in Tuchmark Etain is Angus's foster father. They appear to be love rivals in the story of Knowth. Whisks Englec away, kidnaps her basically, and Angus returns to find that she is gone. And he performs this bizarre ritual of placing know or hazelnuts, the know as they're called in Irish. And I have some hazelnuts here. The know, that he placed some of these on the ground, and that has been suggested to be sort of a metaphor for the placing of the remains of the dead in the chambers. You can see this is the main mound here in the background, but several of the smaller mounds in the foreground. Quite an incredible sight. This is a view down along the Eastern Passage, which is the longest of all the passageways in the megalithic structures of the Boyne Valley. It's twice as long as the passage of Newgrange. It is also cruciform at the end, but it is not open. This may look like I'm inside there. In fact, I have the camera wedged through the bars of a gate here, and the gate prevents access. And one of the reasons, the main reason, is for health and safety reasons, because when you go right down to the end, the stones lean in so much that you have to crawl onto the ground to get into the chamber. A little bit of the megalithic art from Knowth. This is a sort of symbolism that the archaeologists would refer to as opposed seas. And I think these are very interesting. They're like the goddess, the Egyptian goddess Nut or Nut, who appears as a sort of a giant arching figure through the sky. Some authors have suggested that's the Milky Way. And of course, there's a line here and reflections almost denoting the idea of, above and below. What's above is below, heaven's mirror, what's in the sky is mimicked on the ground. And the Milky Way of the heavens, of course, is mirrored by the looping Milky Way on the ground. All of this is surrounded in a cartouche or a frame or a border, as it were. We can speculate, and that's all we can do. We can't really ask the builders anymore. Come here, you wouldn't do us a favour and tell us what that means, would you? Because it's bugging me. And of course, everybody who comes to Brunibonia, it's the most asked question of the guides. What is this? What do the symbols mean? Are they supposed to have a definitive meaning, or is this abstract, liminal, meditative, spiritual? We've entered a different dimension art here, as has been suggested that some of the patterns in megalithic art are those seen in under the influence of narcotics and in trance states. Who knows? Here I see what I often see on the camera. If you ever take a picture of the night sky, the stars, and point your camera towards the circumpolar area of the sky, the stars that don't set, it's like it's representing this. The further away you move from the pole star, the stars sort of rise and set on the horizon. Those closer to the pole star stay visible all night long, and hence are called circumpolar. Curbstone 5, which is a fabulous site. There are suggestions that this may represent the phases of an eclipse. I think that's quite fascinating myself. I think that they were concerned with eclipses. The people who built the monuments, and their mythology seems to indicate it. And some of the megalithic art can be interpreted as an attempt to reconcile solar and lunar movement, and to perhaps to represent the lunar periods, which we think are so abstruse. We think that they're mysterious and arcane, but that's because we don't pay any attention to them anymore, because we're under artificially built roofs and ceilings, and we're in artificially lit buildings, and we don't really pay attention to the sky anymore. We're not watching it the way they watched it, you know. Barbara is asking, how do we know what the builders called constellations? We don't, Barbara. We can only speculate as to what they might have called them. And most of the work there is comparative, you know. This is the Curbstone 52, which Martin Brennan coined the calendar stone. We did an episode about this, so I'm not going to go into this in detail, except for to say it appears to be an attempt to represent, first of all, the moon's monthly cycle, 22 crescents and 7 circles, making 29, approximately the number of days in a lunar synodic month from full moon to full moon. The waved line in the middle representing a counting system, counting 30 to 31 months, and when you go back 62 months, which is approximately equal to 5 years of the solar cycle. And even 3 crescents that are partly obliterated or fully obliterated by this spiral, representing the 3 days of the moon's month, when it is invisible, because, or we call it the dark moon. Modern astronomers call that the new moon. I think the new moon should always be the terminology concerning the very first appearance of the moon after it's disappeared. But the dark moon lasts for about 3 days, because the moon's in the same area of the sky as the sun, and it's the backside of the moon, the far side, that's being lit, and we see the dark side, and of course it fades into the blue and the twilight, so we don't see it. A view from the top of Knowth. You are able to walk up onto the top of Knowth, looking down towards the Boyne, and in the distance the hill of Slane here, famous as being the place where St. Patrick lit the Paschal fire, but of course there are prehistoric monuments up there. Dua Slania, the burial mound of King Slania of the Furbolg. And this site, which is a miniature, no, it's not a miniature henge, sorry. It's a grooved ware late Neolithic timber circle that was evidence of which for the holes were found during excavations there in the 1990s. And it was reconstructed to show visitors what it would look like. These are also called 4 posters, because inside the outer circle of posts are 4 posts in a square, which it has been suggested may have supported a platform upon which the dead bodies were placed in order for excarnation or defleshing, or, you know, the eating of the flesh by birds to happen. It's part of the treatment of the dead in the Neolithic. The third of the great monuments, and it's funny, I always refer to it as the third because it's nearly always the sequence in which I arrive at it. Knowth is believed, without any carbon dating, Knowth is believed to have been in fact the first of the 3 to be built before Knowth and Newgrange. The crater in the top of it, as a result of those botched excavations or that treasure hunting on behalf of J.H. Frith and his colleagues from the Royal Irish Academy in the 1840s, at the time of the Great Famine, when they'd nothing better to do but to look for gold at Knowth, and sure, they half wrecked it when they did. Thankfully, they gave up after a couple of seasons, because otherwise they would have wrecked the place completely. Knowth, some of the curbstones are visible, but some of them are still hidden beneath the ground, waiting for some future excavation or revelation. Of course, the sycamore tree is a modern addition. The most well-known stone of all at Knowth is the stone called the Stone of the Seven Suns, which is Curbstone 51 on the eastern side of Knowth. It has been suggested that these emblems represent a depiction of a solar eclipse of the sun, which is very interesting because the mythology of Knowth appears to talk about, in symbolic language, a total eclipse, or at least a sudden darkening when a a king and his sister mate in an incestuous union. And of course, the subject of incest wasn't only brought up in episode 102 when we spoke, and episode 98 when we spoke about the recent DNA study of Newgrange, which found that a male buried in Newgrange was the product of a first-degree incestuous union, i.e. his parents were either brother and sister or parent and offspring. That the king and his sister mate, and that mating breaks the magic spell that has sort of made the sun stand still. There's a summer solstice legend, and a sudden darkness comes, and the project is abandoned. And all the men who are building it, doesn't mention the women, just says the men of Éireann, all the men who are building it abandon the task. And thus the place shall be known as Dua, darkness or darkening, the act of darkening. So this is a very low down view, taken actually on about a week or so before the winter solstice, when on the morning of around the solstice, as the sun rises, and just after it rises, it casts this beautiful light onto the stone and lights the solar emblems, if that's what they are, very beautifully. It's called the Seven Sun Stone. There are 7. I'll show you them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a row. This one doesn't have an outer circle around it. One above, which is a little bit less, it looks less like a solar eclipse, and it actually looks more like this kind of hairy star. You know, this depiction of a comet is what it looks more like. And of course, the one that's lower down, which has a lot more rays emanating from it. But it has been suggested these are depictions of a solar eclipse. It's also been suggested they could be a depiction of a comet. It's also been suggested they could be flowers. Who knows? However, when you take into consideration certain things, the mythology being one, it would appear that it might tie in with the idea of an eclipse. There's also some artwork here, and one of these sort of these chevrons or these inverted V's up here at the top of the stone. Here is the entrance stone looking at Douth's southern chamber. This was discovered by Martin Brennan and Jack Roberts in 1980 to be aligned to winter solstice sunset, which is quite a spectacular discovery because it proved all of a sudden that, you know, this thing about Newgrange discovered in 1967, but Newgrange wasn't the only monument with a solstice alignment in the Boyne Valley, that its near neighbour Douth had an alignment on the same day except for the evening time. And there are 2 very large cup holes here. Some people call these Lucy's eyes. In folklore, these markings are generally said to be the knee holes of someone like Fionn McCool or Cuchulainn, and later, of course, St. Patrick. St. Patrick knelt at that stone. And now there's no specific folklore about St. Patrick at Douth, but you'll find these stories elsewhere. And of course, you'll see the spiral here. I hope you'll have seen the spiral carved into the stone. That gateway is locked all year round, except for 2 hours of the year on the afternoon of December 21st. The OPW come along and open it, and if it's a sunny afternoon, you can go in there if you form a queue, and you can go in there and get a few minutes looking at the sun spilling into the chamber of Douth. This is the total eclipse of the moon taken over Douth in January of 2019. And Douth at the very end of twilight, when the stars have come in, and it's a windy night and you can see the clouds blowing along. What I like about that photo is that, you know, the clouds are almost mimicking the mound and the tree. You know, it's fascinating. Another view. And again, just very lucky to be in proximity to be able to spend time there. We move a little westwards. I'm conscious of the fact that we're almost at an hour and a half, so I'm going to skip through the last bit more quickly. The complex of Loch Crew, Sliabh na Caille, said to be older than the monuments of Brunabónne. Originally, there were a lot more cairns than are surviving right now. This image showing Cairntee and the complex of cairns on the summit of Sliabh na Caille. In the intervening landscape is another hill called Carrig Brack, which means the speckled hill, also known as Sliabh Rua. And then the westernmost hill, Cairnban or Cairnbawn, which basically means the White Cairns. The one that's not shown, because it's behind the drone, is Patrickstown Hill. There are 4 hills in total. There's Sliabh Rua, and I think Red Mountain, and I think I discovered a few years ago why it was called, because at Samhain, when you're standing at Sliabh na Caille, the sun sets over it, and from Cairn L on the western hill at sunrise on the same day at Samhain. The sun rises over it. So very interesting. Discussed it, I think, in detail on the website on mythicalireland.com. There's another view there, Slieve Rua, and there's Carrickbrack, and there's Cairnbawn. Beautiful landscape. Really, really powerfully beautiful. Offering fabulous views out over the land. Cairn T, I've done an effort here. I did an effort with my own lighting that evening to try and make it look a little bit like Newgrange, because it's not lit up at all. And I used remote flashlights to try and give it some light. Unfortunately, this gate is now closed permanently because of some subsidence inside the monument, which is a great, great pity. And it could be some time before it opens again. You used to be able to go in there and have a look at, for instance, on the equinoxes, the sunrise lighting up the stone in the very rear of the chamber. A really beautiful event to be witness to. Still happening after, I don't know, we could be talking around 3400 BC here. You know, we're almost at 5,500 years. And there's another view of it. And as the sun rises, this square of light gets smaller and smaller until it just frames this symbol here, which looks a little bit like the symbols at Knowth, except for, you know, it's a little bit changed. A sort of that flowery symbol, which could be a sun, which could be, again, an eclipse, which could be a comet, could be something like that. Cairn L is fascinating. Again, closed to the public, and it's very difficult to get the key to the gate. This picture was taken with the camera looking in through the gate, through the bars of the gate. But in October, the sun shines in initially on that side of the... so I have to make sure I'm getting this right. The southern side of the chamber. In the middle of October, it shines into the end of the chamber. But towards the end of October and into the beginning of November, it shines onto this slender limestone pillar here. And its reflected light is shone onto a stone in here in the largest recess is this one here, and then it gets cut off. And of course, that moment is really marking up. It's marking the period. It's marking Samhain, the beginning of winter. And when the sun first reappears after this winter solstice, it's actually Imbolc. It's the beginning of spring. And this is what you see when you stand at the gate of Cairn L. I think I've gone very dark there on the Facebook feed. Maybe I haven't. YouTube seems to be okay. When you stand at the gate of Cairn L looking at this, you're actually looking at the sun rising out of the peak of a partly destroyed cairn on Slieve Rua, Red Mountain, or a Carrickbrack. So this is the other image I wanted to show you, which is why Slieve Rua has its name. Of course, don't forget that the hill across from Newgrange in the Boyne Valley is called Red Mountain. So it's the same thing. It's the same idea. It's so called because of the sun rising out of it. I think perhaps not. You know. Here's Cairn S, one of the smaller cairns close to Cairn T, and this was an alignment looking towards the sunsets at the time of Bealtaine in early May, Ad Lunasa in August. And these are the periods bracketing the sun's journey up towards summer solstice, when it stands still for a while and then returns again. You can see here the capping stones are gone, and much of this cairn material has been removed, but thankfully some of it does survive. And I've been very lucky to be witness to several spectacular sunsets there. Here's one taken the same evening, and you can see the faded megalithic art here, which has been gradually faded and washed away by the rain and denuded by the frost. And so the difference between what you see inside Newgrange and Knowth, for instance, and Fourknocks especially, and the difference between what you see that's been exposed to the weather is quite stark. One of the things is a lot of the stones at the monuments are upon which the megalithic art is carved are sandstone or shale, and they're easy to carve, but unfortunately they also erode quicker. This is Cairn New, another of the cairns on the opposite side of Cairn T, and has an alignment looking towards the sun rises at the time of Samhain and Imbolc. So again, the same alignment as Cairn L. Cairn L was this one. That's Cairns there. Same alignment, looking towards the sunrise at Samhain and Imbolc, bracketing the winter period, the beginning of winter and the beginning of spring. Fascinatingly, when you zoom in on the image, you can see here on the horizon, this clump of trees is the hill of Tara. So Cairn U points towards the hill of Tara for the sunrises at that time of the year, which I think is very interesting. Because conversely, when you're at Tara looking back, you're looking at the opposite for sunset at Bealtaine and Lunasa, which is fascinating. The hill of Tara, a very substantial complex of monuments, and of course, in mythological terms, always associated with kingship, as early as Moitura, when Nuadu, who was the first of the Tuatha Dé Danann kings, held a great celebration there after After his silver arm, after his arm had been restored following the first battle of Moitura. The oldest monument is Dóigh O'Neill, which is a small passage tomb, also with the exactly same alignment that we've just been discussing about here at Cairns L and U at Loughcrew. The passageway opens up towards the sunrises at Samhain and Imbolc. Later monuments, Bronze Age barrows incorporated into later Iron Age monuments, all surrounded by this, very large Rath Nari, the Wrath of the Kings, which is believed to be Iron Age in date. On Furra, the royal seat, with the Lea Foyle on it. The Lea Foyle was originally located beside Dóigh O'Neill. That's the stone that's said to scream when the rightful king stands on it. And here, closer to the camera, Cormac's house, Cormac Mac Art, being one of the most famous kings of Tara. And this partly destroyed monument is the Wrath of the Synods, Ramach Shanad, very heavily butchered by the British Israelites in 1899 because they came here looking for the Ark of the Covenant. Yes, the biblical Ark of the Covenant. Thankfully, they didn't find it. And down here, just towards the edge of the image, is the banqueting hall, or Teach Michorta, which archaeologists believe may be a linear late Neolithic cursus monument. And at the bottom of the image, one of the 7 wells of Tara, the Well of the White Cow. There's that Boyne again. And there's a view of Dóigh O'Neill under a stormy sky. There's a picture from the OPW taken from inside at the very back of a short passage of Dóigh O'Neill, the Mound of the Hostages, looking at this rock art, or this megalithic art, being lit up by the sun on the morning of either Samhain or Imbolc. I'm not sure, because I'm not sure if the detail was given. And so there's me standing on the top of the Mound of the Hostages looking at the sunset. And I don't know if you can see that little range of hills there in the distance, but that's Loughcrew. And at Bealtaine and Lunasa, the sun sets into the hills of Loughcrew. And there's a close-up image of just such an occurrence taken at Lunasa a couple of years ago. Fabulous sunset. But taken with this camera and this lens, I mean, that's taken on the same evening. The sun setting into the hills. When the gate was open at Loughcrew, you could get inside at Cairntee, the Hag's Cairn, and see some of these wonderful sights. The most incredible collection of megalithic art. Beautiful. Just be careful if you ever get a chance to go in there again. Just always look at the ceilings in the chamber and the recesses, because there are giant spiders in there. If you've got arachnophobia, you certainly wouldn't want one of them in your hair. You'd run screaming from the place, whacking your head off all the stones on the way out. So there's a view just looking over the top of the sill stone here. So this is where this is a relatively short passageway and a circular, sort of quasi-circular chamber. And there's what looks more like rock art than megalithic art on these giant stones in the passage looking towards. And as I said, that gate is now locked permanently, so you can't get in anymore. This is the aforementioned equinox stone, the stone onto which the sun shines at the equinoxes. And you can see how pristinely preserved it is. However, this part of the stone cracked off sometime in the past century or so, because in a very old photograph of Loughcrew, that part of the stone is still there. So it's one of the things that we have to be very careful of, is to make sure to guard the stones. I've been very lucky to get up close to that stone and get some nice pictures of it, because I can't get up close to it anymore. If you ever get a chance, if it ever opens again, also look up into the ceiling of that recess, because there's the most fabulously decorated ceiling stone at Cairntee. It's absolutely fabulous. There are what appear to be stars, and again, hairy star, a star in a circle, you know, I don't know. It looks, it sort of has the hallmarks possibly of some effort to represent all sorts of celestial phenomena, from stars and planets and sun and moon to comets, and perhaps even rainbows. Who knows? Is this supposed to be aurora borealis? Who knows? Speculative again, I know. And there's a view of Cairn, the partly destroyed Cairn V and Cairn T in the background on a spring day after it had snowed. What a wonderful experience to be there in the snow. There's the Hill of Slane. I was speaking about this, about how it is famous as the place where Patrick lit the Paschal fire. But in fact, up among the trees is an ancient mound said to have been reinforced by the Normans. Duaslania, said to be the burial place of an ancient king. At the very least, likely to be a Bronze Age barrow, if not something older again. I would hope that eventually it will be found to be a passage tomb of the same age as the monuments of Newgrange. The belfry and the remains of St. Patrick's Church and the cemetery on the Hill of Tara, the Hill of Slane in the fog, very ethereal. And there is a picture of the mentioned mound in behind the ruins. In the wintertime, this is a picture taken by Richard Moore about 20 years ago. And you can see it's a very flat top mound, which is typical of the castle moats, or the moats of the Normans, flat topped, basically defended mounds. And there's the ruins of the belfry. Oh, the belfry's in pretty good shape. And the college, this is a Franciscan college of the 1600s. And the Flemings, who were a Norman family, were the owners of the area at the time. And it was said to have housed 4 brothers and 4 lay brothers. In fairly lucrative surroundings, should be said. And from the Mill Mountain, Drogheda is said to be the burial place of Avergeen, who we mentioned in lots of episodes. At the time of the equinoxes, the sun sets into the Hill of Slane. You can just about see the belfry there, and sets into the mound of Duaslania. Very interesting stuff. And there's the aforementioned Mill Mount with its 1808 Martello Tower. Well, it's been recently reconstructed in the past 20 years. Just over 20 years. Reopened in 1999. But the mound upon which it sits, according to local folklore, is the burial place of Avergeen, or Amergin of the Bright Knee, the leader, the spiritual figurehead of the Milesian expedition, which came to Ireland to take Ireland from the Tuatha Dé Danann, from the deities. But according to the annals, this was plundered by the Danes. The cave of the wife of Govan, the Goban Sair, or the Govnu, was plundered at Drogheda, giving me suspicion that this is actually a passage tomb. Archaeologists have been using remote sensing to look into Millmount, and in recent years they have sort of veered towards the view that there might be 2 layers of the mound. So there's an older mound under the later Norman mound, because this was all reinforced by the Normans, who built the castle moat of Drogheda on it in the late 12th century. And so in the late 12th and early 13th century, this probably would have had a wooden fortification on it. It's called Millmount because at some point in the 14th century, a windmill was built on it and was there for quite a long time. That's apparently where it gets mill. I always like to think that the name Millmount is older, though, pertaining to mill, as in the sons of meal, Amergin, son of meal, being buried there. This is Drogheda, yes, indeed, my own hometown, Drogheda in County Louth. We're only a few miles downstream of the Brunabonia complex here. And so the Millmount and Slane alignment continues across the country very accurately through the Hill of Mile, through the Crook and E complex to the summit of Croagh Patrick. And here it is. There's the line running through the moat on the Hill of Slane, and the peak of the Hill of Mile, which has a very significant structure on it of unknown date, and all the way very precisely distance of over 100 miles. I can't remember, 110 miles or something like that. More, maybe 120 from east to west. Of course, St. Patrick landed at the Boyne estuary and made his way to Slane to light the Paschal fire. And Croagh Patrick was the place where, of course, he fasted and encountered either demon snakes, serpents, or demon birds, and battled with them. And there's the church on top of Croagh Patrick, which is this sort of conical shape about it. And there he is, the statue of the Hill of Tara, welcoming you to the Hill of Tara. I don't know if he makes you feel all that welcome. I always say St. Patrick in the statue is a very stern look, considering he was able to introduce Christianity into Ireland with very little bloodshed. And, it was a fairly easy passage for him. I don't know why he's so stern looking, but anyway, he is perhaps stern because he's telling us not to pay too much attention to the pagan remains scattered all about the place. And we're going to finish the journey at Uisneach, the heart or the centre of Ireland, the navel of Ireland, umbilicus hiberniae, the belly button of Ireland. Isle na Mirren, this giant stone, this holy stone, as it were, this sacred stone. We now know that it's glacial erratic, dropped by a glacier there at the end of the Ice Age. It is about 30 tons in weight and about 16 foot in height, but it is very symbolic. It is very sacred, symbolically said to represent the unifying or the uniting or the meeting point of the 4 provinces of Ireland. And of course, the provinces are called Cócage, which is a sort of a corruption of the Irish word 5. It means a fifth. A province in Irish actually means a fifth. And the 5th province was the one that unified them, Uisneach's navel stone. Isle na Mirren, also known as the Cat Stone. And of course, we've done episodes about this around the time of Bealtaine in early May, and much more detail there. Yes, the 5th stone, representing the 5th mystical province, and also said to mark the burial place of the goddess Eru. And of course, it was to Uisneach that the Milesians came to plead with Eru. And she said that they could take Ireland if they agreed to name it after her, which they did. And of course, that's why Ireland's name is Era, after the goddess Eru. And that's where Ireland comes from, an anglicisation of Ireland or Ireland. Ireland without the E, Ireland. There's a self-portrait again, just giving you an indication of the size of the stone. And lovely to I had the opportunity to be there at twilight during the Bealtaine Fire Festival, which wasn't held this year, but they still lit the fire. Remember that? It was a beautiful evening. It was lovely to see them continuing to do that. But this is the restitution, the reinvigoration of a very old festival of Bealtaine, which we know was held in the early medieval period at Uisneach, and who knows, may have been held previously into the mists of prehistory. And it's a lovely pageant and a lovely display. Lots of fire, of course, as you would imagine. And at that time of the year when you get the longer evenings and the twilight, and it's a lovely, lovely festive occasion. So hopefully after COVID, whatever happens to it, hopefully, we find a vaccine for it and we find a way to quell it and things get back to some normality. That's one thing I would love to see coming back to normal. Perhaps there are we've had that discussion about what we would like to see coming back to normal and what we wouldn't. But one of the things is I'd love to see Uisneach Fire Festival being restaged. And of course, Michael Dames, we've discussed his work in Mythical Ireland or Ireland A Sacred Journey. And his suggestion of radial alignments emanating from Uisneach along all sorts of different lines. The summer solstice one is the only one I was going to very briefly discuss, which I did, I think, quite lengthy discussions on in the past. From the Stone of Divisions through Cairns, very precisely at Loughru, to the Calivera's house on the peak of Slieve Gullion, the highest passage tomb in Ireland. There's the Calivera's house in County Armagh on Slieve Gullion. And here is a wonderful photo by Ken Williams taken from the chamber of the Calivera's house at winter solstice sunset. And when you're looking out the passageway towards the sunset, you are actually looking in the distance precisely towards Cairns or the Hag's Cairn at Loughru. Remember that the Calivera is the same as the Caille. It's the same deity. The Calivera's Cairn points towards the Cailleach's Cairn at Loughru, and eventually towards the Stone of Divisions at Uisneach. An extremely precise alignment. And so there we leave it at Isle na Mirren. Don't forget, if you have questions, I'm not staying on because it's very late. And this is actually one of the longest episodes we've had. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you again, Desiree, for allowing the use of the projector and the images, which helps, I think, to make it a little bit more interactive. Don't forget, folks, lots of special stuff happening over on Patreon. So go and check it out, patreon.com/Mythical Ireland. In the meantime, you all know where to find me because you're here already. mythicalireland.com, facebook.com/Mythical Ireland. Some of you are watching there. youtube.com/Mythical Ireland. Some of you are watching there. And I also have photos on Instagram and Flickr. And don't forget, I have a series of books. This is one at the moment is the one that's getting all of the attention from us because Island of the Setting Sun very shortly to be released as a 2020 edition. Go and order your signed copy. Pre-order now on mythicalireland.com. And I'll sign it for you and I'll send it to you in about a month's time. Thank you all for watching. This has been Live Irish Myths. Don't forget, in the meantime, keep washing your hands and using hand sanitizer. Maintain your social or physical distancing outside. 2 meters is what's recommended here. Do your best to keep yourself safe and healthy so that you can keep coming back. In the meantime, episode 106 next week. And it's yet to be decided what that'll be about. Stay safe, stay well. What is it I say? Ikawach, which means good night. Kolosov, sound sleep. And Slongafol, which means goodbye for now. This has been episode 105. Fantastic stuff. Great to have you all along. Thank you for joining us. See you all next week. Good night. Bye-bye. End. Yes.